Welcome to this week's episode of the Good Luck Club podcast. It's extra time with Spencer Matthews, founder and CEO of Clean Liquor. Hey Spencer, good to have you back.
Hello mate, thank you very much.
Thanks so much for giving your time to our audience again.
Mate, I thought the first one was actually great. I really enjoyed it. I really loved meeting you, and it was a shame that it was over Zoom or whatever is normal nowadays. So I figured let's get involved and do it properly.
All good things have to come to an end at some point. Even this podcast is going to come to an end at some point.
Well, hopefully not soon.
Well, not soon, yeah. Let's see how long we can make it last and interesting for our audience. Now, a lot of my audience loved what you had to say in the last podcast episode, and they've been flooding me with questions. Some rude.
Yes.
No surprise.
No surprise.
You know,
Bring them on.
Bring them on. But I'm going to keep it clean in the theme of keeping it clean. You know, we're a clean podcast. You've got a clean brand. Seems only fitting. So one of the questions I had was, and this is a clean one, but a lot of people want to ask you your view on how you start a business. A lot of people out there want to start a business, and they wondered, what's your view on how to start a business?
Just quickly first, what were the rude questions?
I deleted them from my mind.
Right. Okay. Well, fine. I quite like those.
Okay. Well, I'll dig them out.
Juicy
we can bring them. We can bring them in later. I'll dig them out.
We'll stick strictly business, will we?
I guess so. We're trying to be a business show, but
okay.
We can always go off track. But
perfect.
Let's try. Tell me what you think about business. How do you start?
Well, I guess it starts with an idea, and then it depends on how serious you are about pursuing that dream and goal. For me, it was kind of like it made so much sense to me. It was almost like being, at the risk of sounding dramatic, it was almost like being struck by lightning. Like I haven't had many feelings like it when I kind of knew that I had to do something, not do something to kind of change the world. I just knew that my life was taking me down this particular path at that time. And I'm not particularly religious or anything like that, but it made so much sense to me. And actually, at the time, it was really exciting, and the whole marketplace in which I was entering was really new and still is really new. 87% of people still don't realise that no and low alcohol spirits exist here in the UK. Yet there's there is actually quite a big market for it. The monthly retail figures across all retailers are not enormous, but pretty juicy. You'd be quite surprised. So for me, it was just a question of getting the right team in place. I mean, obviously, I'm a first-time CEO. And actually, when I was talking to our investment partners, Lightspeed, at the very beginning, they're a huge fund over in the States, and they started Snapchat and Goop, and they do, a lot of interesting business that, you will have heard of. I held my hands up pretty early on, and I was like, "Look, I've got this idea. Here's a sample product." And we were sat in a restaurant, and we had lunch and discussed, the possibility of it flying and becoming a global brand. But I said, first up, I don't have any experience of running a business. I can't do Excel. If you show me a spreadsheet, I'll be completely lost. And they said that actually they quite like that about early stage business, and that they typically invest in founders and the idea and the kind of look and feel of the early brand and the founder in particular. So the first thing I had to do was find a team, find people who knew the market and knew business far more than me, and I knew it would be a really exciting learning curve, and it has been.
So that's actually interesting. You have this idea. Is the first thing you think about getting a team member on board, or getting an investor on board, or was it you validated it with friends first? Did you go research the market? What was the process?
I knew that my lack of experience across the market that I was about to enter, or even a similar market like alcohol, my knowledge was next to nothing. So I knew that in order to be investable, I would need somebody shoulder to shoulder alongside me who carried some weight to the idea. I think actually the more you think about it, I think millions of people probably have what they deem to be exceptional ideas, but executing the idea and turning it into a profitable business is incredibly difficult. 99% of startups fail, I think, because people Yeah, and it's not that, sorry, 99% of startups fail, but it's not necessarily the idea that's bad. It's just the execution has to be a certain way. You have to do things in a certain way. I spoke to a number of people, and this is when, right at the very start, when you believe that your idea is the best idea in the world, so you keep it all really close to your chest, and you're really worried that people are going to copy you, and and actually, it's the last thing on people's mind to care about your idea. Phil Knight writes about it quite well in Shoe Dog, when he talks about his big crazy Japanese shoe idea. Whereas actually, it doesn't sound that crazy now, obviously, because everyone wears Nikes. So it was exciting for me. So I spoke to a couple of people who I knew, who were friends, who I knew were brilliant with business and had had some success with business, and they led me to others. And eventually, quite early on, actually, I ended up with Justin Hicklin, who's he's one of those fantastic characters. A bit of an older gentleman than me. He's the silver fox of the group. Kind of been around the block and done it all before, across all areas of business. Really quite funny. You could say almost anything to Justin, and he's worked on it or he's done it. So he's worked in cigarettes, he's worked in booze, he's worked in cars, he's worked in pretty much everything, but particularly booze. Although he doesn't drink much himself, strangely. He's got a large family and they live happily just down the road from our office, actually. But he was just very essential to getting the whole thing moving. First time we met, bought a big A3 pad of paper and a pencil and drew this really elaborate business plan and how the whole thing should work. And this is before, we'd even discussed what a deal might look like between us. But what he said was true. He just said, you have a bit of a little bit of fame, I suppose, you'd slightly recognise here in the UK. So we need to use that to our advantage. But actually, you would not have a clue how to get this thing going. So you need me, typical kind of, you need me more than I need you type thing. Although in this case, it was we needed each other, for this to really work. I think the education piece that comes with asking people who drink alcohol to drink non-alcoholic alternatives and replacements, there's a lot of education that comes with that. So you kind of need a voice. It's why a lot of these early stage companies in the space take ages to get going, because people just don't know they exist. You need a voice, which I have. And my wife has a voice, and I have a voice, and it's all authentic, and it means the world to me, and it makes sense to me. So people feel more inclined to listen to the story because it's similar to millions of other stories, possibly their own story. So Justin and I, sorry, did you ask for a detailed?
I love it. Carry on. No,
yeah.
I think hopefully people are picking up that you're teaching people the process of which you started a business. And in this case, you started it by finding the right partner to help you do it.
Right, the right partner to help me do it. Yeah, I just think it's very important that people, and I can't speak for others, but it was very important for me to understand. To take myself out of it and understand that, this is something you've never done before, so why don't you get advice and lean on people who have done it before and who've done it successfully, who've successfully exited businesses and for good money and who understand how to run a business. There's putting your own money into something and then selling whatever you produce and then using that money to fund the business, and you go round and round and round, and that's a small way of looking at it. The larger way, and what we did was to aim quite high, be quite audacious, really try and sell the story that this could change the way millions of people view alcohol, and it's very on trend and it's exciting, and we realized very early on that venture capital funds and people in general were very excited about this space, which made it all the more exciting for us. But, that doesn't mean to say we didn't have our, bumps in the road like any startup does. But Justin was, anyway, long story short, Justin was very handy. He understands how gin is made. He understands how a still is used. He understands, all of this shelf life stuff that you need in products. He understands preservatives. It's just part of his nature. Stuff that I might not think about. One of the big hurdles we had early on is our products don't contain alcohol or high levels of alcohol, so they go off. They rot, they mold, the cork will rot.
Shelf life problem.
Yeah. How do you get around it? How do you create a liquid that'll hold for a year or two in a bottle, on a window shelf without rotting? That is something that I would never think of, because you buy a bottle of vodka or you buy a bottle of gin, the thing never goes off because it's full of alcohol, right? So we had all sorts of fun hurdles to deal with, and also try and create the world's first extremely low alcohol to the point of being non-alcoholic gin and rum. And can we persuade people that alcohol is perhaps a little less necessary than they have become accustomed to, which of course is part of the fun. But I could have answered this far quicker. Surrounding yourself with good people early on was of huge importance to me. I mean, even Bill Gates says, he surrounds himself with incredibly intelligent people, even though he's arguably one of the most intelligent people in the world. And I think we said last time, he has lazy people do hard jobs because they'll find an easy way to do it. Like just having trying to tackle big problems on your own is very difficult. So
did you identify exactly what it is you wanted to do? I mean, you of course you're the CEO today, but it might not necessarily be in the right role for you. Was it clearly at the beginning, this is what you do, this is what I do, this is what I want to do? Did you make those parameters clear?
Yeah, I mean, I love a challenge, and I'm very competitive, and I like learning. And now that I'm sober, it's far easier to learn. So things stick a lot more. I was a little bit scared's the wrong word, but I was a bit apprehensive of the CEO role. It's a big role in a business. It's very important. Could we hire a better CEO than me? Of course we could. Sure. It kind of feels like my baby. Like I'll always be the founder. I feel like at the moment we're such a kind of family team. And by that I mean the same way as what you said. I feel extremely close to my team members. We kind of all work with each other instead of having hierarchy and working for one another or whatever. And I feel like we're really creating something that's really game changing. So actually, the role doesn't mean what it might mean to a CEO at a bank, or a fund. I feel like we're really collaborative in the office, and I feel like we all play a part. And if I don't have the answer to something, I know that someone that we've hired will, because that's why they're there. So I don't think I fill the boots of a typical CEO. I think, we're trying to do game-changing things in a game-changing market. And whether or not I'm able to execute my thoughts in an Excel spreadsheet kind of comes second. I feel like I kind of steer the ship with help from experienced individuals who used to work at Innocent, Britvic and Mars and Nestle. And, we've purposefully built a team of people who really want to make a difference this time round and who really want to do exciting things. But in terms of, I did go through a period where, I felt like I was kind of in over my head, especially when, we closed the first investment round of £2.1 million, which doesn't sound like, a huge amount of money, but kind of felt like a huge amount of money to me, having not done it before. Now we're raising, 7 million and we're literally about to close that now. So I'm far more used to it now, but I kind of lead the charge on all things financial with the business. But when I went into this, I was thinking that we might need 60 grand to get the whole thing off the table. You
mentioned this in the other podcast, yeah.
Well, because I've got no experience of ever starting a business. So, I was asked a question by a guy called Hooman Jamshidi, actually, and he just said, how much money do you think you need? Yeah. And I just said, well, I need enough money just to get, the liquid into the bottles and, sell the stuff. And he was like, no. You need structure, you need a team, you need this, you need that, you need an office, you need... a social media manager, you need a marketer, head of marketing, I was just saying, hey, we're fucking miles away from that. And he was like, well, do you want the business to fail or not? And that's when I started to look at things a bit differently. Yeah, you mentioned this in the last podcast, and I think it's such a good lesson for people to pick up on, that sometimes people don't think big enough. Yeah. They start off small, thinking the way to build a business is start off small. Actually, it's easier to build a big business. And like you say, raise the money properly, get a team properly, people that know stuff that you don't know, then you don't need to know it.
right? That can save 10 years on its own. Where you having to go and learn it all yourself one by one, right? So I would say about having an accountant. People are like, I'll do the accounts myself. And just get an accountant. You know, like they've spent years learning how to do it. Just let them do it, you know.
I think if you can eliminate risk and spend time trying to progress the idea in the business, more than trying to learn new skills, that's probably a good idea.
I think a lot of people see hiring people as risk, increasing the risk.
Yeah.
And what you're highlighting there, which I agree with, actually hiring people can reduce the risk.
Yeah.
So if anyone out there listening that thinks, you know, hiring someone increases their risk, there will be a small business forever. And ironically, that business is in high risk because it's so reliant on that one individual.
Yeah. And not everyone wants to have a huge business.
Totally.
Or not everyone has global ambition. You know, it's a lot of work. You know, I've got 2 kids now, and you know, sometimes you know, I love what we're doing, but obviously I also love my family, and sometimes when I'm leaving, you know,
hard choice to make walking out that door, isn't it? Sometimes. Yeah.
Well, it's you know, especially when you know, when your attention is split over 2 things that really matter. Of course, family always comes first, but you know, sometimes if your attention is not, you know, where it should be in the business is going to really suffer, and you know, you may not be able to build what you've always dreamed of, and that will ultimately result in you feeling like you're failing, you know, for doing, is that okay, sound-wise? Yeah. For doing, you know, what it is you feel like you should be doing. So it's a really fine line, the balance. But fortunately, my wife is brilliant. She's the best mother in the world, in my opinion, and she's great, and she completely understands what we're trying to do with the mission and stuff. So
that's very important to have your partner on board. I personally have gone the other way. I actually sold all my businesses when my son was on his way. I can't do 2 things at once well. I'm so obsessed with business when I do it. I actually had to, in a way, sell everything I had, all the businesses I had, and kind of liquidate so that I can actually spend the time with my son when he was first born, first few years. I was co-parenting with my wife, and you know, best time of my life in some respects, also the hardest time of my life. Because actually running a company in some respects is far easier than being a parent, I think. You know, at least people do generally what you tell them to do. A 2-year-old doesn't want to do what you tell him to do. He doesn't, that's it. You know, you've got no control.
We have a 2-year-old, he's 2 on Saturday actually. And obviously our daughter's about 6 weeks old. So it's all fun and games at the house.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, are they bonding? The 2 of them?
Yeah. Well, he's a mixture of kind of being kind of madly in love with her and a bit jealous from time to time. Yeah. I think mummy's attention is usually with the newborn. So
my son gets jealous of me giving my own wife a hug. I have to remind him I was hugging him before you were here, mate.
Yes,
you know, like
absolutely.
But I wanted to ask you a bit about education. You touched on it just a moment ago. You know, your education in business, and what I'm in admiration for you is with the way you think about learning. You're open, you're listening, you're taking advice, you're evolving. In business, not a lot of people do that. Actually, a lot of people. This is my idea. I know exactly how to do it, and they do it without listening to other people. And you do listen to other people. But what were you like at school? How has school affected you? Did that play a positive role in your life?
I find that school and business, unless of course you go to business school, perhaps, really don't kind of mix at all. And you know, a lot of my business heroes left school at 14, 15, 16. I think there's so much pressure on kids nowadays to perform well at school and GCSEs and A-levels, and of course you'd rather your kid got A's, right? But like I was never put under any pressure at all by my family to perform well with grades. Dad has always said, you know, work hard, you know, be honest, you know, put your head down, work hard. You know, he's worked incredibly hard his entire life. My mum works incredibly hard. My brother works incredibly hard. That's something that's a part of our family. At school, I don't feel like they teach you, and of course this depends on the school, depends on the teacher, you know, there's always, but in general, you know, school, you are taught, to do well at school, you need to retain information. You know, you learn information, you retain it, you know, and you regurgitate it, and you get your A stars, and great, you know. That to me is not intelligence. It's not a sign that you're smarter than the person next to you. It's a sign that you're able to retain that information better than that person at that time. They don't really teach you how to spread your wings much. They don't teach you the kind of the joys of thinking differently. They don't really. You certainly don't get, put on a pedestal for being different at school. I think, the whole point of school is, you conform and you retain the information and you succeed in the eyes of your teachers. And, I have my views, I suppose, on school. Like, university, for example, a thing which we might touch on is I went to university in California because I used to want to be an actor. And I, 9 months in or 10 months in, I just decided, is a Bachelor of Arts degree in theatre going to help me become an actor? Like, when does anyone go in for an audition and get asked about their degree? And I, noticed it quite early and just thought, actually, I had an awesome time at the University of Southern California, loved it, played rugby, really enjoyed myself, but that was about it. And I've always had a bit of an obsession with earning money and being successful and achieving things. And I felt like I was achieving very little at uni. So I left uni, and it really wasn't for me. I just, unless of course you want to be a doctor or a lawyer or something that, genuinely requires you to have a degree. I've had several jobs that require me to have a degree and I don't have a degree. I don't think actually people, when you're faced, face to face in an interview, I'm not sure people really care. Like, that's I've never been an investment banker, so I don't know if it really matters. But ultimately, I think I go much more on people's ability to impress you in the room, and the general feel you get off someone. Like, not just trying to butt you up, but I just naturally like you. So I don't care if you have a degree. If we were to ever work together.
I think I've got 3 GCSEs, just hopefully it doesn't put you off me. But
no, but do you know what I mean? Like,
I do.
If we were to work together, it's the last thing I'd care about. So
I want people to pick up on that, actually. Young people today, there is a lot of pressure on them, especially with this whole GCSE and all that stuff, kerfuffle, if that's a word. Yeah. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter, right?
There was a kid laying on the train tracks the other day trying to kill themselves, weren't they? Because they didn't get the grades they wanted.
How has it got to that? It's just crazy, isn't it?
It's not. It's just unusual, isn't it? Because I think it's instilled in you. That, I was very fortunate. I went to Eton, and I was made to feel quite stupid. I did subjects that I liked, but I never got anything lower than a B. And at A level, I got straight A's because you can pick and choose the things that you want to study. And fortunately, I speak French, and I did drama and art and economics and French, I think. So for me, I did stuff that I knew I was happy with, and I got my A's. But in the lead up to that, I think I came 257th out of 258 in trials.
They actually rank you in that way?
So we have mock exams before the exams, and they rank you and they read out the names.
Designed to make you feel bad about it.
Wow. But at the time, it's kind of like, you kind of don't care or whatever, or you think you're a bit cool for the system, so it doesn't really matter. But ultimately, I remember that because I was made to feel like I was the second least intelligent person in my year at school. That's
crazy, isn't it?
And I just thought, and then of course I went on to get my straight A's and did whatever. But I found it's very hard, obviously, to knock the school system because I wouldn't be able to suggest a different way of doing it. But I haven't given it much thought, if I'm honest.
I think we have to. We've both got kids that are going to be going into that system. It's something we do have to think about, isn't it?
I think it's something we should think about. Yeah, not necessarily changing the system, but just our approach to whether or not we'll care about certain things. If my son is an honest kid who works hard, and my daughter as well. Sorry, just my son came first. If my children are honest, they work hard, they tell the truth, and they're good kids. If they get C's in their exams, I'm not going to care. We
need to date stamp this so they can listen to it later, so they know this to be, how their dad feels.
I think I'm trying to remember, looking back at it with my parents. I don't think I was ever, and they got me tuition, and they got me all sorts, to try and make my grades as good as possible, obviously, because I think the world is a competitive place and you want to do well and you want your kids to do well. And that's how it's measured at school. Whereas, some people now measure success by money. Some people measure success by, happiness and love, and all of which are correct. It's however you want to see it. But school is measured by grades. So if you want to compete and you want to be, the best student you can be, you need to get good grades. And I guess it's an okay way of looking at things. But I just feel that the way in which you're graded and the way, there's nothing. I suppose as you get older, you can, and you're allowed to elaborate a bit, or you write, or, say you do English. Now we're going off piece, but say you do English and you write an essay, and you can write about whatever you want, and that's a lovely way of being able to express yourself. But and how do you judge that? How can you give someone a D and somebody else an A when maybe you didn't get what they meant?
Picasso would have got a D in art, wouldn't he?
Probably. Would, yeah.
Someone was like, "What is wrong with this stuff, mate? What is that meant to be?"
Exactly, but that's what I mean. It's so subjective. Art is extremely subjective, but so is writing, and so is so are a number of things.
The other thing is parents. I mean, as parents ourselves, we want the best for our children, right? So somehow by them not, I think about, well, do I want my son to go to Eton, for example?
Yeah.
Conceptually, if they're going to be a prime minister, don't they have to go to Eton? Isn't that like, Eton's part of Eton's underlining scores that every prime minister's kind of come from Eton?
Well, I guess there's a number of prime ministers that have been to Eton, but I don't think when you're at Eton, you're thinking about becoming prime minister necessarily.
But their brand is a bit like Harvard. Harvard, if you go to Harvard and walk around, you spent time in California, they talk about how Bill Gates went there. But they might also, he dropped out and he did Microsoft. But it's almost still a badge of honor for them that he went to Harvard, even though he dropped out.
Yeah.
Right? So
exactly.
It's that kind of thing, isn't it? And as a parent myself, it's like, I don't want my child to be disadvantaged in any way.
Yeah.
So, why not give them access to the very best schools there is? A lot of the time they'll sell you the network, right? They'll say, well, imagine the people you'll meet. You'll be rubbing shoulders with the next leadership, if nothing else, right?
Yeah, I haven't given it, I loved my time at Eton, not because it's expensive or better than anywhere else. I just loved my time there. I thought the teachers were really, really exceptional people, actually. And you kind of knew that you had a kind of, even if you're a bit naughty from time to time, you had a cool kind of rapport with them. They were kind of very, they made you feel like an adult, all the time, actually. Housemasters were cool. And of course, I loved sport, and the facilities there are fantastic, and blah, blah, blah. And in that regard, it's a really great place. But, is the education going to be better than the private school or public school down the road? Like, no, probably not. Who knows? It's hard to tell. You get kids, a lot of people who went to private school, so public or private. Eton's a public school, but it's like, but actually it means that it's private, doesn't it? It's backwards.
Private school. Yeah. I've lived overseas. It makes it even worse.
Because actually it's
state school.
Yeah,
state school, and then it gets really confusing. Like is it public? Is it private? Is it state?
Are there hundreds of thousands of kids in my year who went to state school who are smarter than me? Sure, of course there are. I don't think going to what's deemed to be an amazing school means that you're going to necessarily receive a better education, but it's certainly interesting from a history perspective, and it's whether or not you like that kind of thing. I know that my dad at the time thought that if I could get into Eton, that would be the best thing for me, and I'm glad I went.
What school did your dad go to? Did he?
Worksop College, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that a private school?
No. So my dad was the first in the family to kind of succeed in inverted commas and do well. He was a mechanic initially. And then worked for a race team, and then was a racing driver, and then he's always been entrepreneurial himself, and has done some very exciting things in business, and now would be regarded as being a pretty successful guy. But no, his route. So I'll never be able to say that I came from a humble beginning, and just. From I made it all myself, because ultimately that's not strictly true. My father did very well, and I've always had a nice life. Whether that was a leg up in my own business is not the case, but I unfortunately can't say that.
It's an interesting dynamic, though, isn't it? Is there that in the I guess the benefit that your parents give to you can also be some downside, right? I mean, there's that freedom piece, or as you've discussed before about drinking too much when you're young. In a way, you had the freedom to do that.
Yeah.
Perhaps if you come from a poorer background, you frankly don't have the funds to go out and have a good time every night getting drunk, for example, right?
Yeah, I suppose so. It's a funny one because, you get people who go, oh, well, he did it all himself. And, like this business, if I do succeed in the way that I believe I will have built this business with my team all on my own. Totally, I've given my dad an opportunity to invest in the business, and he did, but the business did not require funds from him. I wanted him to come along for the ride with us. And if it pays off, that's great, but it certainly wasn't reliant or dependent on him or anyone else in my family. So in that regard, you've got the whole kind of, I made it on my own thing, but I can't ever say,
I don't think anyone makes it on their own anyway.
Grew up in a lovely house and had a fantastic childhood, and I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah, and I think that's something you should be proud of. Clearly are, and I do think about the listeners out there. Sometimes I know they get pressured to go to school. I guess I'm always thinking about the listeners, how they can maybe navigate this, and even parents for that matter. I think about my children. Will you send your children to Eton, or have you thought about education? Is this something that comes up in the family?
I think it would be. I think I'd definitely put him down. Whether he gets in or not is something completely different. Yeah. Like they may hear that he's my son, and that would blacklist him.
Just buy him a wing or something. Buy him a football pitch or something.
Yeah, exactly. No, I don't think there'd be any bending of the rules to try and get him in. I think I'd give him the opportunity to try and get in. I don't think I'd even attempt to pull strings, and if you got in, great. But, 7 to 1, 1 in 7, get in nowadays, and it'll be tricky. So him being my son won't help him.
Well, you say that. I think it's interesting though. Going forward, education. My view is education is going to be much more tailor-made in the future. So we kind of through tests you can find out what kids actually like to do, what they enjoy doing, and schooling will ideally be tailor-made to their needs. Yeah, that's what I think the future is. Yeah. So I watch my son play, and I play stuff around what I know he likes to play, as opposed to me. It's 4:00 now, so you're going to do maths. Sit down and do maths. And
some
so
kids like maths, and some
kids
if
they like maths, then I'd sit down and do maths with him. But I'm not going to, not because it's 4:00, I'm going to sit down and do maths, which is how the present school system works.
Yeah,
right?
on your point, it's very, very structured. And it's a shame because, like when I was at school, maths and economics and English and history were a lot more valued than art and theatre and
sport,
music
for that matter.
and sport. Yeah, so. And that's a shame because, if you're...
That is an easy fix, by the way. That is an easy fix for schools, I think. Giving people the chance to be a bit more...
Do what they want. Because
actually, you don't have to have history or biology necessarily. You could focus on what you like doing.
But actually, the lot that love the economics and the maths and stuff are forced to do art. And the lot that love the art are forced to do the rest. And I think at a young age, it's nice to kind of push kids to maybe do things that they don't necessarily want to do, because
maybe they don't know they don't like it or not.
In life, you can't just do whatever you want, right? So it's nice to have some structure to a child, right? You have to do this.
In business, you can, however, right? In real life, you can actually decide you don't want to do the spreadsheets. Yeah. You can hire someone to do that, right? Ironically, in life, you can actually decide what you want to do and not do.
I think it's nice to get to a certain stage before you can decide what you can and can't do. I think with not to say that I've always had a huge amount of respect, and not to talk about my dad again, but it was quite strict actually. I didn't have much leeway. If I was told to do something, I would have to do it. That's a simple fact. If I was out with my mates, my phone rang at 2 a.m, and it was my dad, and he said get home, I would be in a cab.
How did he manage to do that? I need to know that tip.
No, but as a parent, seriously though, because I actually think it's quite rare now.
Very rare.
If my dad told me to get home, I would be scouring the street for a cab. I wouldn't even finish my drink. Seriously, and there was just a level of discipline in the house. That doesn't mean to say that when I became a teenager, I revved the throttle a bit harder and
battery ran out on the phone.
Well, maybe when it was less appropriate for him to be calling me in the middle of the night, I really burnt the candle at both ends. But when I was young, my father had complete control of me, like full control, and that's essential to respect. And now I still respect him. Our views may differ on something, and maybe I will think that my idea or view is more valuable than his, and that's fine. That's a position that I've worked to be in, but I think it's very important to try and have control of your kids, and that comes with fear's the wrong word, but it comes with a level of discipline.
I like respect.
Respect and discipline.
Perfect word for it. Yeah.
Couldn't be more important actually, because kids who run rings around their parents it's a tough thing to then negotiate back. If you're the parent and you allow it to happen, you're in really tricky waters there.
Changing gear a bit, work-life balance. You mentioned it a little bit earlier, and I know. I mean, it sounds like your parents managed to get some work-life balance. But what about yourself now? Are you able to get that? And what do you think work-life balance is anyway?
I think at the moment it comes. Well, for us in particular, there's weeks that are far more essential and important to the business. More so than others, so I will know in advance, if we're doing a big raise and I'm fronting that for that month or 6 weeks or however long I think it's going to take me to raise the money, I'm going to be pretty one-track minded about raising that cash and, one-track minded about, and I'll be available, for meetings, calls, whatever, all the time. As opposed to, when the raise is complete, for example, I might be a bit more casual, could spend a bit more time at home. I think it's always important to put a timeline on these things. I think if you're just constantly incredibly busy all of the time, a dynamic might evolve kind of at home that's somewhat resentful, because then you really are putting your business, before your family maybe. But sometimes that's kind of, sometimes if you have fire in your belly and you're competitive and you want to make a dent in the world, you can't do that by spending half the day at home with your kids and then being, in the office for half that time. Was it Elon Musk? And I think I even said this last time we spoke, he said, I'm able to achieve certain things because I spend twice as long in the office than you do, like I do, these long hours, and you don't. That's why I get twice the amount of work done, and it is as simple as that. We're in a space that's fortunately quite creative as well. So nowadays, especially post Corona or during Corona or whatever we're in now, a lot of people are realizing that they can do a lot of things from home. Of course, it's harder to work from home with 2 kids because Theodore does not understand when I'm on an important call or not. And he wants to play with me. So, it's kind of, in that regard, if you do have a big important day, it's better to do it from the office in my case. But I think it's just important for to find time for your partner. Vogue is also very busy, and we're going on a nice kind of 3-hour early dinner tomorrow night just to make sure that we recharge each other and spend time with each other, and because it's quite easy for her to fall into her work and me to fall into mine, and then we deal with the kids, and then we go to sleep, and then we wake up, we do it all again, and I think we have quite a good work balance. When things aren't quite going your way at work, and you feel like you want to get stuff over the line, I can be a bit one-track minded with work and the business. And I hope it's not mistaken for me putting the business first. It's a temporary kind of thing that I kind of feel I have to do just to achieve certain things. Big global companies don't build themselves.
I think work-life balance is one of those things a lot of people ask me about. It's a struggle for a lot of people trying to, as you say, deal with that belly fire they have, go out there and build something, make a dent in the universe, but not neglect their health, not neglect their relationships, friendships. I'd say it's one of my few regrets, actually. I worked so hard on my businesses and I moved to different countries to make those businesses work that I lost a lot of friends along the way. You just, it's not easy to get that balance right, is it? Yeah. That's why I think what we talked about in the last podcast as well, the mission being very important can drive you, right? I mean, in your case, hopefully helping people not consume so much alcohol and have alternatives at least to alcohol-based drinks, right? So I think that's a big mission, actually. Yeah. If you can help people get their brains back on to their own lives and so on, it makes a big difference. But a lot of people get lost, I think, along the way in their work-life balance. What you said resonates with me because I think what you're saying is you're permanently adjusting.
Yeah.
Right. You're allocating time to your partner when you feel that there's a need, and you're allocating time back to the business when you need. But so many people are like, well, I'm going to work from 9 till 5, and then after 5 I'll stop working, and suddenly I'll be all focused on the family, and then I'll go back to my job tomorrow. And that's when I think you go a bit insane.
Well, I think exactly. Yeah, you couldn't be more right in my view. I think it's important to have fluidity to it. Like there are some days where I'll turn up to the office, I'll get my stuff done, and I'll be kind of done for the day at 11. And I'll hop on my motorbike and head home, spend the afternoon with my kids. Yeah. And if a phone call comes through at 10 p.m, I'll take it. Yep. I'll go into the kitchen, I'll chat for 2 hours, and I think it's important just to deal with things as and when and get the balance right, by not being overly structured. Your day may not look the same as somebody else's day, and you might need to mesh with them to get something done. So just be more fluid, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, my example, I left school and home at 15 and started a company, and I worked non-stop to 25 so I could retire at 40. And now if I wanted to, I could spend every single day with my son if I wanted to. Now I choose to do a podcast show and interview amazing people like you and share your knowledge with the world, but that's my choice, and I think that's another way to go. I sometimes say to people when they're starting a business, like going to prison for 2 years. Yeah. If you just get your head down for 2 years, completely work on it 7 days a week, then you'll be able to come out the other side and have as much free time as you want. Yeah. Whereas a job often is the opposite. Right?
The scary thought, actually, which you put in my mind the first time we spoke, which I'd never thought about before, is if it goes wrong. And the risk, and
I'm glad I put that in your mind. Yeah. That's exactly the purpose of this podcast.
No, but it was funny because I'd never thought about it like that. I went down a kind of rabbit hole like you did at the start, and you couldn't get me on the phone for 3 minutes. I was just so driven to realize the dream. And as you said, I didn't speak to my mates for forever. It's like everyone just vanished around me, apart from my family. But couldn't have cared less, blinders on, head down, and just, you begin dredging through this stuff, and you say to yourself, oh, but we could exit this in 4 or 5 years. So it's only that period of time. Let's just get it right. And then actually we were talking, and you were like, the risk is such that, if it doesn't pay off, then what? Then you've wasted the time, and you've, not severed relationships, but allowed relationships to fizzle out. And possibly, it could have had a negative impact on your marriage and stuff. And for what? If it doesn't work. If it works, hallelujah. You have whatever you want, whenever you want. Fab. What you're looking to achieve, or what I'm looking to achieve, isn't a monetary sum. It's total freedom. And it's the ability to be able to do what you want whenever you want. Sounds wrong. It's to have that freedom and that liberty to essentially exist without limitation, and to have achieved something so great that you've left your mark on the world. And if you want to pack up your bags and go somewhere with your family, you can do that. As you're striving towards, I guess, what you have, which is financial independence to the point where it doesn't look to be fizzling anywhere, and the ability to spend as much time with your family as you want.
Yeah, I think it's. I do think there's a time and a place for spending. That's why I say, you've said it before too. Young people should start a business as soon as they can, because one, you've got more chances to fail. You can fail more times because you've got more time. But equally, you've got less to lose, less pressures on you. Less, certainly family, 2 kids. It's not easy. You're always going to feel guilty. I actually just apologized to my best friend for 25 years, saying I'm sorry. I didn't go to his wedding. Luckily, he then got divorced, so somehow it worked out. I was actually happy when he got divorced, because I'm going to feel less guilty about not going to his wedding. Yeah. But at the time, I had a choice between a big project with a client. It was the pitch for this big client. It was Credit Suisse at the time. It was an $8 million project. And the day that he was getting married was the day we were doing the pitch to win this client, to win this work. And I made the decision to go and do the pitch. But I always kind of had not a regret, but a feeling that did I do the right thing there? Yeah. And then I apologized to my friend and said, so I didn't make it to your wedding. And he said, don't worry, I've divorced her now anyway. But he also said, actually, Simon, you've always been there when I really needed you to be there. Yeah. The wedding was fine, but that's, I needed you to be there at certain points in my life, and you were there. But I had all this guilt that I carried around, that I'd made that decision, almost the business over him. But I guess what I'm saying is, I think one of you agree, your friends will always be there for you anyway. When you come up for air, the real friends, the ones that were true friends, will totally understand it's your time to do something else.
Missing a birthday or a wedding or whatever, it's a time constraint, isn't it? It's like, it's a shame to have to conform to stuff like that. If it works, it works. Like, if I happen to be free on that day, then
but birthdays are a pain in particular, because if someone says, well, you missed my birthday, or it's my birthday, I feel so guilty, and like you just wish you'd remembered and said happy birthday to them, but that's what's good about social media, in the sense that it comes up on your feed, you can't forget. Here we go, you're right,
here we go, we're ready.
Here we go. So Spencer, what do you think about social media?
I understand its place in society. I certainly understand its place in marketing and business. To me, it is a marketing tool. That is all it could ever be. I can't for the life of me understand why, and I realize millions of people use it in this way, but why you would freely advertise your private life publicly for no gain at all, other than trying to seek validation from strangers. I don't get it. I will not ever understand it. Actually, I find it quite scary. I think the whole thing is it's like a competition that doesn't matter. It's like, you can play sport. You and I could play tennis, and we may be extremely competitive. I don't know if you're competitive, and there's a winner and a loser in that game. And in social media, there are no winners at all, unless, of course, you can use it to build a brand and really spread interesting and relevant news. I cannot understand the point of it. Like, if I was to go for lunch and I was to take a photograph of my food and I was to post it on social media so that all my followers can see what I had for lunch, why would I do that? Millions of people do it. I don't understand it. Is it so that they can see that I'm healthy, or is it so that they can agree with me that what I'm eating looks good, or what is it?
In a way, you're touching on reality TV too here, aren't you? People want to see people's lives, aren't they?
I'm a reality TV. I'm a product of reality TV, and I understood the market for it as a fun thing to do, but I don't understand the demand for it. Like, the market was exciting and interesting. To seemingly be followed around and, give an insight into people's lives. It was something that was new. It was kind of very George Orwell at the time, sort of, with a kind of fun modern twist on it. But actually, I couldn't think of anything less boring than being let into somebody's life that I don't know. Maybe that's just me. I just don't find it interesting.
I couldn't agree with you more. I'm going to be devil's advocate just for the sake of the debate, though, because it is an interesting one. I just saw a social media post. It was like 1984, George Orwell's 1984 was not meant to be a manual of how the world was supposed to be built. Yeah, it's become a manual. This the big state watching everything we do, and all this kind of Cambridge Analytics, all this stuff influencing the election and so on. It's all become quite true, right? The social media is influencing us in such a bizarre way. It's literally a new type of drug, right?
But people want to be influencers online instead of being actual influencers.
No, that's a good point. It's funny because I a couple of months ago I put up a video about how to start a business with no money, saying you don't need money to start a business. And I was talking to someone about, becoming a sponsor, and they're like, that video only got 2,000 hits. I was like, yeah. I was like, but I know 9 people that started a business because they watched that and realized they could, and they didn't need any money from any investor to do it.
Way more valuable than any hits.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting how the world judges success by how many hits you got, as opposed to the impact you had.
But it's a fame question as well. So back when I was growing up, actors and musicians and news reporters and whoever, famous, recognizable people were famous because of their talent and their skill and whatever. Now, if I took all my clothes off and I walked down Oxford Street, I would be photographed, and that would be all over the papers. And that nowadays would be considered fame. And anyone can do
I don't
that.
think you need to take your clothes off. You just need to talk about how coronavirus was a scam or something, and that alone.
I have my views on
well,
that.
we better not. We have your PR company going to cut that again. We better not talk about that. But I do. That's what I mean, though, right? I mean that you've actually got fame. You've got a huge amount of following on social media.
But
right?
for what though? Like, yeah, I did a show which was quite successful and quite popular, and I get that. But actually, it's not real fame. You look at kind of Leonardo DiCaprio and all these guys who've been in Hollywood movies their whole life. That's fame. That's A-list, high-end fame that the whole world can recognize. I've touched just enough recognition, I suppose, for it to benefit me in a business sense. Now if I call someone, they might be more inclined to pick up the phone because it's that guy from television. That's all I ever really wanted it for. If you're doing a reality show here in the UK, are you ever going to be a big Hollywood A-lister? No. So you're facing. So what is it you're chasing? Do you have a plan? And if so, what is it? People say to me sometimes, would you want your kid to do reality television? And it depends. Are you going to leverage it in some way? Are you going to use it to your advantage in some way? Or are you just trying to be famous? Because there's really no point to that. I don't, unless you can turn your fame into money for your family, or turn your fame into a business, which is
a bit like DiCaprio's done, who turned it to climate change and tried to leverage his
but
fame to help people.
It's you have to have a plan. You can't go into stuff wanting fame. Nowadays, who's not famous? Like, what I mean? There are people online with millions of followers. You've never heard of them.
Loads of people like that.
Loads.
I come
of
across
people
someone like that every day, and I'm like, who is this person with 2 million followers?
I know, but that's just because it's the social media is just rife, and
plus you can buy a lot of that. You can get a lot of social media traction just by getting a robot in Russia to.
Everybody has a voice now. So actually, I was thinking the other day how funny it is. If you look at kind of history and people who made a real difference and who will always be remembered, or some of the quotes that they're remembered for, big, bold statements. Everyone has a voice now on social media. So if you were to be like that, you'd get nowhere.
Not only would you get nowhere, you got a lot of shit too. I think if Winston Churchill said, "You want to know what democracy is like? Speak to your nearest electorate." They're idiots. In other words, what he's saying. That day, if he said that on social media today, he'd be out of office by the end of the week, and we probably lost the Second World War.
I was asked the other day by I won't say who, but someone political, saying, you and your kind of generation with 1 million followers or whatever, you could be the future of politics as such. And I said, if I came out with strong political views online, you've got no idea what would happen to me. I'd be ridiculed, mocked. I couldn't even come out with my own views, because it's like, you can assume that every single time you say anything online, you can assume that 50% of people will hate it and 50% of people will like it. And that's if it's a kind of balanced, normal comment. So having kind of big, crazy views nowadays is not seen to be radical, and it's not seen to be interesting. You're just seen to be
glory hunting. Yeah, exactly.
Glory hunting. So actually, there's no real platform on which to exercise your intelligence, even, because it's pointless. Like even if you felt like engaging in a proper debate, what's the point? Because people don't listen to it. It's part of. There's good arguments to not stick around, because actually it's like not in life.
Wow.
I mean, like
stay with us here, Spencer. Stay with us.
I mean, like in the UK, in politics stuff in the UK, it's just actually having a view is almost worse than not having a view nowadays.
But it'd be interesting.
You're better off not having a view, really.
Completely ban politicians from going on social media. And people, you have to read policy documents and understand what they're really saying, not the news soundbite that's being projected by whatever media is projecting it to make you understand it the way they want you to understand it.
I feel that the news in particular and media is a very very unbalanced delivery of facts. The news used to be like the FT and stuff used to deliver proper, and the Times used to deliver proper, unbiased, factual news. and you would read it and you would make your own mind up. And now it's just not like that at all. It's just
trying to influence in some way.
Yeah, they're trying to influence. Yeah, but also it's just crazy. It's like with this whole coronavirus pandemic, we won't go into too much detail. Or Dean will ask you to strike it from the record. But it's crazy how much kind of fear like they're looking to just put in the general public. You are more likely to die tripping up and drowning in a puddle.
Don't include it again. I've got this clip already, and I've already had to delete it, and I love it. I love what you got. I love what, if you guys want to hear what Spencer's got to say on this subject, then if 9 of you come and tell me, I'll release the clip to you personally, right? Because it's interesting what he's got to say on this subject. But to your point, you have to be careful, right?
Do you think it's strange? And I thought about this the other day. Do you think it's strange that now when you go through airports, you give your DNA essentially?
It's ridiculous. Yeah, of course. It's
so essentially by testing millions of people for coronavirus.
Got a DNA bank of everybody out there. This is 1984. This is
George
Orwell's prediction.
They don't need a DNA now for anything. So like, if they were to just store that, which of course they'll say they won't.
Well, they do. They have to because they will track and trace.
Yeah, so they've got. So now, for example, I travelled to Jersey over the weekend. So now the government have my phone number, email address, DNA, both from my nose and my throat.
Yeah.
And
the truth is,
I hope you're never involved in a crime. You're gone.
And I would argue that even if governments are not using that data, companies are.
They will.
I mean, that's by the way the big thing about DNA testing. The testing kits that people get for DNA. They're not that expensive, and people can get their DNA tested, and they can even use it then to track their family history. You can go then find out who your relatives are.
Yeah.
But what people don't realise is on the back end of those startups, they're selling that data. To medical firms and so on, right? Yeah. So
I used to think that if you ever had the misfortune of being fingerprinted, if you'd done something wrong, that's it, you're in the system.
Yeah.
Now they've got your DNA.
Yeah, well, yeah.
And you haven't even done anything wrong. You're just trying to go to Jersey for the weekend.
My house was robbed, and I actually had to have my fingerprints taken so they could take them off whose fingerprints they were around the house.
System,
so then I'm in the system, and I've never done a criminal act in my life.
You're in the system.
I'm in the system.
Yeah. But, you better hope you don't have a criminal act of any kind.
I hope.
You've got your details. So.
I hope, but that's not my plan.
Even if you were to rob a house in gloves, doesn't matter. They've got your fingerprints. Yeah. So see you later, mate.
Yeah. So no point in wearing gloves. I won't wear gloves then. Good tip.
No
so this podcast now is about how to rob people's houses and not get caught. First of all, don't get coronavirus. Don't go to Jersey. Yeah. These are the tips on how to rob people. But bringing it back, I mean, on the business front, it seems to me like
I feel like you have to bring it back with me a lot.
No, it's more like I really find what you have to say interesting, but I'm always thinking of my audience, what they ultimately gain from it.
Surely they want to hear about the DNA.
I'm sure. I know for a fact. I can hear the pinging now. People want to hear what you really think about coronavirus, but we're going to have to censor it, otherwise.
We can maybe do a whole separate piece.
Okay,
on
and
corona.
warn people we're going to be controversial.
Just say this is controversial. Yeah. We're going to talk about.
But it is true about the fear, by the way, and I think it's affecting business. Like even myself, I love fear. Actually, I think fear is a skill. I lean into fear, but I actually have a fear of meeting you today after this coronavirus nightmare, like shaking hands, saying hello. It's just gone weird, isn't it?
Yeah, it is weird.
You can't live normal life anymore. And I think people need to be careful of that. Don't let it. It's back to the media.
Quite a nice excuse as well, though, to not have to see certain people.
That's true. Sorry, coronavirus. Busy.
Yeah. Oh, I'd love to have you around, but
coronavirus.
The virus.
Yeah. What can you do? But. People are going to know now when you use that excuse what you really mean. Sorry, I don't like you.
Young kids here.
Never liked you. Never wanted to hang out with you. Now I've got this virus. Thank God I can use it as an excuse.
Have you quarantined though? Okay.
So how long have you been quarantined? You've been going to the supermarket? Anyway,
no.
All the inappropriate questions you ask people. Have you been going to the supermarket? But I guess I'm always wondering now for people when they're starting a business. Like social media does, as you said quite rightly, is such a big part of starting your business. Do you think people should build a personal brand up, a company brand? Do you have any opinion on social media, whether it matters?
I think people are well within their rights to use social media however they see fit and build their own personal brands if they want. Very, very, very saturated market. If you are looking for kind of breakthrough, I think pretty much everyone, well, is it 50% of the UK is on social media?
Is it? I would have thought it'd be much higher than it.
Yeah, I think it actually is only 50%, which actually was a figure that made me delighted because it means that 1 in 2 people aren't.
Yeah.
You know,
also
great.
Scary though. If only 50%, I can't believe it. It must be like everybody under 7 is included or something in that survey.
Yeah, exactly.
If everybody under 7 isn't on it yet.
No, I think look, people should use social media however they want. My wife uses social media for her own personal brands, and I used to use social media for my own personal brand. It's just you begin to. I feel that my view on being out there and being a name is just like it's been just put in the kind of dustiest of broom closets. I just don't really care about what people think of me or my personal brand or whatever. For me, it's all about the business because that's the way in which we can reach people the most easily at the moment. We believe that we're going to do a big number on kind of household penetration here in the UK, hopefully through television and outdoor advertising next year. That'll be really exciting to see how that goes. With the most followed social media page on Instagram in our marketplace. So, of course it's very important to us. 90% of our sales, I think, come through social media. So, if I met the creator of Instagram, I certainly wouldn't give him a dig. I'd be delighted, but it's for personal reasons. I don't buy it. Like that being loved and being validated by people you don't know is it because so unimportant. It's
a bit like when you tell people, money won't make you happy, and the people that haven't had money, they're like, oh, let me have money first, and it just helps, figure. Yeah. Do you think social media that's happened to you? You've got a massive following on social media. I was looking at your Twitter, for example, 650,000 followers, and you hardly tweet on it. I mean, you hardly.
I don't think. Yeah, I tweet.
Is it because you had a bad experience with it all, or you've been there and done it and you've realised?
No, I haven't had a bad experience. If anything, actually, people are wonderfully kind to me online, but actually, I don't. I'm a hypocrite because I use social media. I use Instagram, but the reason I am trying to grow my personal brand, I suppose, is so that it benefits Clean Liquor. Like if I did not have Clean Liquor, I would not be on Instagram.
Actually, I'm the same personally as well. I'm only on social media personally these days to try and promote the fact we've got content here. It's useful to people. Otherwise, I wouldn't bother. Yeah.
And by the way, if my Clean Liquor account outgrew my personal account, I would get rid of my personal account. I see no use for it, whatsoever outside of business. But I suppose if you can let people, it's a strange one because my brand is kind of character driven at this point. It's not a big enough brand in the world to exist without a front man or a face or a voice, as we touched on earlier. So if my face and voice can be more recognizable, super, so every so often I'll whack up a post. But actually I use my Instagram more, I suppose, to discuss alcohol. I throw in a picture of my kids every so often just so that I'm not completely one-track minded with the whole thing and people get bored. Because I guess, I've been persuaded that people love an insight into our lives because I've been on television for a few years. But even that I struggle to kind of understand. Like I would never buy a magazine to read a story about somebody that I've seen from television so that I can see what the inside of their house looks like. It's just not part of my nature. I understand there's a big market for it. But yeah, I mean.
So you have such amazing self-awareness because I feel like you went to California, you were going to be an actor, and you've kind of completely switched into this business mindset and even to the point where you're like personal brand, you only do it to leverage helping a business. It's like you've always been an entrepreneur, but somehow you got a little bit allured into the
alcohol got in the way.
Oh, again, right. Yeah. Oh, it's such an interesting loop back to that. Yeah, I see. Yeah.
No, but I would sometimes wonder why I was different to my brother and my dad, who have always had this ability to spot a deal and to make, good money and to put their heads down and not get bored. And sticks through stuff and navigate tricky situations. And I always felt very different to them in that I was quite lazy and very interested in going out and very interested in being the center of attention and all these things that just don't matter. And And for me, the difference was my alcohol consumption. The very second, actually, maybe 2 days after, I completely lifted my foot off the gas on the alcohol thing. I became noticeably more like my dad and brother, who I admire so much. And now, 2 years later, I'm very similar to them. If anything, I'm probably more entrepreneurial than both of them. But, you know, their work drive is something that I have really kind of respected, and they have qualities that I will never have, and I have some qualities that they don't have. But to even be likened to them took sobriety in my case. Like and it's funny because they both drink alcohol, but you know, not in the way that I used to.
Yeah, you asked earlier some of the rude comments that people gave, and they weren't really rude. There were just some funny comments people made. I think one of the biggest things that I kind of took from your podcast last time and the audience reaction to some of it was how different they see you as, you know, now. Yeah. Like you're a completely different person, but what they probably didn't realize is you weren't the real person when they saw you before under the influence of alcohol. That wasn't really who you were. Whereas this is who you really are now, this driven, authentic, straightforward, smart business person, right? I mean,
I guess. I mean, you know, it's difficult when you're constantly full of toxins to be normal, I suppose.
So it's a big warning for people, though, isn't it? I mean, again, I always think about like 15-year-old me. I started a business in part because I couldn't afford a drink. You know, I literally couldn't buy a round. I didn't drink, and then I focused on business, and it worked for me. I could retire at 40. I think a lot of people, that's not the path they end up in. They peer pressure, have a drink, you know, and then it's a bit like Barney Rubble in The Simpsons or something, isn't it? He just has a drink, and suddenly it's like he switches into this kind of driveling mess on the floor, right? So maybe he should be your mascot.
There you go. Rubble,
but to your point, I don't think it's not against alcohol. I think that's actually, we were talking off podcast about, you know, it's not anti-alcohol. People can have a drink, right? But I think it's just a question of like knowing what it does to you, because some people it really affects.
Yeah. Well, you know, as you said, we're absolutely not anti-alcohol. We're more of a kind of moderation brand, but it's only really relevant to people who drink to excess. You know, a lot of people who I hold in extremely high regard, who are very successful people and very interesting people, drink alcohol and they don't get nailed, you know, and they wake up the following morning, they're in the gym and then they're in the office and whatever. You know, I had trouble lifting the handbrake off. You know, I would when I drank, I would drink quite heavily, and you know, my day and mood would be affected, and you know, my work drive would dissipate, and I would essentially just rely on others for opportunities to fall in my lap, and you know, fortunately a few did, and that's that. But actually, you know, in real life, you need to go out and make opportunities for yourself. You know, things don't just happen.
I hope people take inspiration from you around the social media side and don't take it so seriously. I think, you know, someone like you who's got a lot of following, it's good to hear it from you, actually. I think a lot of people need to hear that, because a lot of people get so wrapped up in it. They dream of having the following you've got. I think that's going to make their lives better, right? So it's good to hear. Thank you.
If I could give my following to people who really want it, I would. I value.
There's a competition.
Well, no, I value. Like, it's not that I don't value my followers. I don't value the size of my following. What I really want is for the people who do follow me to notice significant change from the person they thought they were following to now, because I think it's very important that people understand that, well, A, people can change, or that B, you know, simple changes in your life can make a major difference. Like, I would have been a shocking father 2 years ago if I hadn't changed my relationship with alcohol. And now I think I'm a good dad and a nice businessman and a great husband or whatever, you know. So that little change made a massive difference to my life. And I think it's important for people not to just care aimlessly about being followed by people they don't know. It doesn't matter. If I had 20,000 followers, all of whom really understood what we're trying to do with Clean Liquor and really thought I was kind of inspirational almost in that sense, I would prefer that than having 1 million people who loved me on Made in Chelsea, because one is far more valuable to me than the other.
I think that's a good message, especially for young people out there and even people in today getting so obsessed with older people's social media as if it's some sort of validation. I've seen people tell me they didn't get a job in marketing because they didn't have a big enough social media following themselves, therefore they can't be good at marketing. It's like,
It's just madness.
It's just madness. It's got nothing to do with it.
Madness.
Total madness. The world
Sounds like a good excuse to not hire someone.
Well, maybe, yeah, too tall for radio sort of thing. Yeah, you're way too tall for this job. But how do you interview? How do you interview people? What's when we mentioned it a little bit earlier. You look at their, I guess, aura or their image. But do you actually have a process now? Is that something you've learned? Or?
There is a process. I come in fairly late into the process. Not because I'm more important than anyone else, just because. We have people who are more apt at hiring than me, and people who look for things that I wouldn't necessarily value but are very important to the job. Also, a lot of the people that we interview will be arguably kind of more professionally sound than me, so it's probably best that
You're so good at being authentic about things. I know what you mean by that.
It's important for me to like the person, or even if we're not similar people, to understand the value that they bring to the company. That's kind of my input on it. Is I need to know that they're incredibly good at their job, that they have their own thought process, that they're not just aimlessly guided by us, and that they will think outside the box and they will offer. At this stage, obviously, there's 12 of us in the office, but as we grow, it's nice. I like feeling challenged. I like having people who question what we do, not all the time, but who are able to say, I think we should do things this way, or have you considered this or that? It's far better than just having people who just constantly do what you want them to do, because ultimately you might be wrong, as I'm sure I am all the time. And essentially, just they have core values that, they're bold, inclusive, brilliant. There are company values. So that's what we look for when we hire people individually. We have funny ways of putting people on the spot during interviews, which I find really funny. We look for...
You're going to give them away now?
Yeah.
People know later when they are interviewing.
I'll give you one. We look for a person's thought process when it comes to making a kind of decision. Like, the fact no one knows the exact answer, but we like to see how people, and I often ask David to keep this till like the stage that I'm there, because I love watching people try and figure it out. So we'll ask something like, how many cups of coffee do you think are consumed on a daily basis in London? So what we're looking for is, do you know how many people live in London? Of those people, what would you think would be the breakdown of tea to coffee drinkers? Like, what percentage? Because you probably don't.
I'm not doing this in my head, as I'm sure a lot of listeners are too.
No. So we want to know if you think there are more coffee drinkers than tea drinkers. Of the coffee drinkers, who has more than one cup per day, and are you ruling out kids, which no one does? There is no correct answer, and we ask them to go through their thought process. So you get some people who, on the spot, just get it a bit wrong. And they'll go, right, well, there's 11 million people in London, so 6 million cups, and you're just like, oh God, you didn't go through that at all. So it's kind of like, and you don't set a time. So I personally, I enjoy watching people try and work tricky situations.
It's a good tip, actually, because I think a lot of the time you're busy focusing on what they're going to do as opposed to how they think. Yeah. Which, when in reality, in business,
it's the answer that there is no answer. So we are literally just looking like, I wonder if he's breaking it down to age groups and demographics.
How deep do they go when they're thinking, as opposed to correct? There is no correct answer. No one really knows.
If somebody went through, and a really intelligent, brilliant person might go through 12 different stages of getting to their answer. Perfect, you're hired. It's
interesting. I mean, my career, I was towards the end of my last business, I would also do the same as you. I'd come in last and interview in the last stage. And the reason that I used to go in last is I always wanted to hire everyone I ever met.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, you're awesome. Yeah. And people are like, no, Simon, hold on. We haven't checked this, and this yet. And I was like, you don't know till they start, was half my thinking. Once people actually start, you can never really tell in an interview.
I'm terrible
like,
with
imagine dating someone, interviewing them before you decide whether or not you're going to go on a date with them. The best thing is just bring them on and see what happens, right?
No, I agree. I'm terrible. That is also exactly the reason because I naturally...
You seem all right.
Yeah.
You got your clothes on, you brushed your hair, you're in.
Cheers, nice.
The other thing I always found interesting, and maybe for the listeners, figuring out people's moral code.
Yeah.
You know, what really matters to people. So I used to always do this test about if I gave you every single thing you ever wanted now, let's say you want a house in every country and millions of pounds in the bank and prestige and recognition from this moment until you're 80. And then at 80, people find out that you're a corrupt person who made all that money in the wrong way. And then the next few years of your life, you know, then you die, but it doesn't matter because only a few years of your life you've got pain. Would you take that deal? And I was always shocked how many people would actually take that deal. And their mindset would be, yeah, that's fine. The next 60 years of that amazing life, house in every country, all the money I need, fame, I'll put up with a couple of years of pain at the end for that, you know. And he basically reminds kind of the Madoff story, you know, like, all you've got is your legacy.
Yeah.
All you've got is your reputation.
Yeah.
So, you know, I was always shocked when people would rather, so in other words, they pick money and fame and success over
the easy route.
doing the right by people and maybe sometimes taking a hit on doing that thing.
Yeah.
So it's anyway, it's an interesting. The interview process is an interesting one, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Well, it's exciting, isn't it, for both parties, because actually, you know, the working relationship is really important. You know, getting a balance in the office of people who you want to spend time with because you're with them so often, and people who can do the job properly, is important. I feel incredibly lucky with the team that we have. Like, you know. And back to our earlier point of kind of not spending too much time with your friends, like, you know, I see all of them as my mates now because we see each other all the time. But also, you know, they're individually brilliant. You know, we're at the stage in the growth of the company where each person that sat in the office has a real role, you know, and it's really exciting to watch it kind of happen. But actually, aside from being at home, which is where I'm at my absolute happiest, I love being in the office. And I think it's a really important part of work, especially if you're the leader of your business, to get that right. I've had countless jobs in the city and trading and broking and in finance where, you know, the idea on a Sunday afternoon of going into work on the Monday morning is just revolting. And you know, you get there 5 minutes late and you get a little slap on the wrist and, like, you know, and it's just, you're there and you're making other people wealthier whilst working for nothing. And
kind of crazy anybody works for someone else under those circumstances.
Under those
circumstances. And there's a lot of people working under those circumstances.
You know, we address, we'll go on tomorrow morning actually, we've got two new people joining the team, and when we have people join, we run them through who we are, what we stand for. You know, the team get together and we'll have nice croissants and stuff.
The new gin and tonic product on there?
Yeah, we'll get a few of them in there.
Wow.
Yeah, and you know, I will personally take them through, you know, why we started the business, you know, what we're doing here, you know, why, you know, what our drive is, you know, what gets us out of bed in the morning, what our visions, our purpose, our values, and it's exciting because I want them to feel what I feel, you know, and I want everyone in the office to feel like they're part of something that could potentially change the world and be great and will always be remembered for it. You know, that's the view, not for the fame. Just like when I'm 50 years old and I walk into a bar in wherever, Tunisia, you know, wouldn't it be great to see some clean rum on the back bar and, you know, feel like
some productive humans out there.
Yeah,
even more so, right?
But you know, and I want everyone in at this stage of the business. And if we do grow to having hundreds of people who work for us, then perhaps, you know, it'll be a bit harder to do this every time someone joins the business. But it's, you know, it's like we're a real family, you know. And a lot of the people who work for us used to work for Innocent, and they always talk about Innocent.
I love that brand too. Yeah.
Innocent back in the day, and back in the day, well, Innocent. It was like this, Innocent. They always talk about Innocent, and I want them to always be talking about clean, you know, like down the line. But it's incredible, you know, the way Innocent was, by the sounds of things, was like a huge family, did it all together, and, you know, it's kind of really noteworthy and really cool.
It resonates with me because just a shout out to my family at Fluid when I sold my company to PwC. It's kind of weird. We were talking again off podcast. I sold that company, and of course, it's an exciting thing to build a company up and sell it. But in a way, you also, you know, you lose your family partly. I mean, of course, I stay in touch with everybody, but it's not the same. And so you enjoy this moment while you can, where you've got that family to go into. And have you ever let anybody go? Have you had to fire anyone? Was that?
Early Corona days. We won't go into what we think about Corona.
But it's not easy, is it? When you talk about building a family, it's like firing your brother. I actually had to fire my own brother, so that was not easy. But
wow.
It's
we had to we let our on-trade team go, which for those of you that aren't in kind of drinks business, on-trade is kind of pubs, bars, and restaurants. We had a team who were handling that, and obviously when coronavirus hit, we were looking to pump the brakes on any kind of spend. For about 2 weeks, we battened down the hatches and just had a real look at what we were going to spend, how we were going to do it, where we can save costs, and figure out exactly how we're going to move our sales and make them more online marketing driven. And essentially, we had no need for an on-trade team, so they were furloughed. And essentially, now the bars, we're looking at stuff just a little bit differently now. A lot of our business is driven through retail and direct consumer sales. So actually, having an in-house on-trade team is something we don't necessarily need at the moment. So that was it was very early days. So it's not like we had worked together for years, and it was. But yeah, I mean, in an ideal world, you would never want to get rid of anyone. But unfortunately, the business is growing so fast, and we're moving into new territories and stuff. So we need to do what we can for the business.
It's one of the toughest things, I think, when you build up a family like you're talking about. If you ever let anybody go, even if they're doing a bad job, I find it hard to let people go personally. Yeah. It's never an easy thing. I guess we could. I could keep talking to you all day, and you've got a company to run, so I don't want to keep you. But I just wanted to end on a light note, really. I've got a few questions here, so I'm only going to ask one, and I'm wondering which one to ask you. I was on TikTok recently, and I went viral on it, and I'm not that happy about it. But I went on. It was my own fault. I talked about how young people, in particular, I think shouldn't have this dream of just buying a property and then having a 30-year mortgage and perhaps not doing what they love every day or building a business of their own. And so I wonder what your opinion on this was. It doesn't have to be the same as mine. I'm just interested, young people out there today wanting to start a business. Do you think that buying a property, the old dream, right? Have a property portfolio or buy a property and spend 25 years paying off? Or do you think there's a better way for young people to start out their lives?
I think owning property is obviously not a bad thing, but to prioritize it as an absolute kind of must have is tricky, because it does get in the way It's a tricky question, to be honest. It's not, because there's no right answer.
My point was around the societal pressure that's on young people. There's this uproar: I can't afford a home, I'm never going to get on the property ladder. That kind of pressure, a bit like education, a pressure on young people as if getting on the housing ladder is the only way to make it. My argument is that there is plenty of ways to make it. Facebook, Google, all these guys TikTok founder, all these guys have actually made real money, actually made it from building a business.
Yeah.
And then they went and bought property. Yeah. Even Li Ka-shing, who's the richest person in Hong Kong, who's actually the 7th richest person in the world, who I know, he talks about, everyone thinks he's made money in property, but he didn't. He made money selling plastic flowers. But there's a perception that he owns property today, so therefore property is the answer.
I think if you're able to do it the other way around, that's going to always be easier, right? I think it's quite easy to stretch yourself really thin, and actually, you only need to look at London as a kind of property market for it to blow your mind. Recently I was in Jersey, and you look around and it's like kind of England in the 1940s. It's so behind the times, but it's so nice. There's space everywhere. You can look at quite nice big houses there for, pennies on the pound, essentially here, and it completely depends. On whether or not you want to live in that property, whether or not you want to build a property portfolio. But no, if you're able to I will always be a massive advocate, and this is why I love the kind of SEIS scheme and EIS schemes so much here, and that people are actually encouraged to invest in startups and small businesses, is that, if you get that right, then everything else becomes a lot easier. I'm trying not to I was very lucky to have the parents I had with the property ladder thing, so I'm not really in a position to kind of comment on it as my.
No, it's fair enough. Yeah,
essentially, I was given a flat, and so for me, the property ladder thing was sorted out for me. So if I'm not the right person really to judge those who are looking to buy a house, when ultimately.
Funnily enough, I got a lot of hate for it.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people were like, "Oh, I bought a property 20 years ago and it's gone up 3 times." And I'm kind of arguing that that's the old way of making money a little bit. And I'm trying to let young people know that owning a house isn't the most important. A lot of people want to buy a house as soon as they can and get themselves into any money they've got saved straight onto a deposit for a house, and then 30 years of their life doing a shit job they don't like often to pay that mortgage. And I'm trying to break that a little bit.
I agree. I agree with you.
Yeah. But fair enough. Thanks for your kind of bluntness, and I understand. So I'll ask you a different question just to end it, if that's all right. Yeah. So which one? I've got so many questions for you still. I feel like I haven't got through half the stuff I wanted to ask you. But who are your business heroes?
They're probably the same as a lot of people's business heroes. I've got a real soft spot for Bill Gates. I think he's just brilliant.
He's a controversial figure. Not everybody loves him, but I'm a fan. So
I'm a big Bill Gates fan. I actually really, another kind of controversial, I really like Elon Musk. I mean, he's obviously slightly odd, but I find the way his mind works just fascinating, and his ability to just achieve kind of lifelong goals of ordinary people such as myself. He has done, I would love to be able to create clean and allow it to grow by, selling it to Diageo, staying on for a bit, and then do something completely different, building that massive, and then do something completely different. Elon Musk's way of being is amazing, and the variety in the stuff that he's done is fantastic, and he has all these incredible massive audacious goals, and he appears to just smash through them again and again and again. So I find him fascinating.
I actually think, and I'm not just saying it because you're sitting here, I think you have some of the traits of Elon Musk. Or one of the big traits for Elon Musk that I think is very important is the ability. He didn't know rocket science or how to build a car.
Yeah.
Right? He didn't know these things. He brought people in that knew these things and listened and learned and adapted, and you've done that.
I think he's a visionary, and he's able.
Well, he's willing to listen to smart people, take on their knowledge, and take on things he doesn't know. I mean, you didn't know anything about the drinks business. You said it many times, very honestly. You didn't know anything about it, and now you do.
It's not possible to have the answers.
But a lot of people want to only work in businesses they know a lot about. Most people will start a business around a subject they know a lot about.
God, that would have cast me out from everything. I reckon 3 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to tell you anything with absolute certainty.
Yeah, but you could have done a lot of things. I mean, reality TV, you could have definitely done more of that, right? You could have got into acting. You could have probably, sounds like, got quite a lot of rave parties working. There's lots of you got the following. There's lots of things you could have done, but you decided to challenge yourself a bit, and that is Elon Musk's game all over, isn't it? He could have sat back with his PayPal money, 112 million, and never worked again.
Yeah.
But he goes again and again and again.
Invested
and again.
it all into SpaceX.
Oh, and Tesla almost went bankrupt again, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it's amazing story, isn't it?
I find his way of existing just really quite infectious. I find him fascinating. Obviously, the late Steve Jobs, was a big fan of, even though in the films about him, he's depicted to be like
management style doesn't sound like the best, but
no, yeah, exactly. No, I'm not saying he was a nice person or agreeable to work with or whatever, but just the way he is similar to Elon, in my opinion, in that he was able to see what the world needed before it needed it.
And ignore the naysayers, because a lot of Apple in the early days was people like, why is it a closed system? Why have you got 1 million ports in the back of the laptop so people can access it? Why are you locking the computer down so no one can get inside? Right? Why?
Try derailing Steve Jobs off his vision. Forget it.
Amazing.
You know what I mean? And the same with Elon.
Well, many people tried. The Pepsi founder, CEO came in and tried. Right?
John Scully.
Have you seen the Fastbender version of the Steve Jobs? And the moment that really struck me was when his colleague said, I never liked you, Steve, and he says to his colleague, well, I always really liked you. The moment, I forgot the engineer guy that he put under. It wasn't Wozniak, the other guy, the engineer he put under pressure to say hello. Yeah. It was Steve Jobs like, I really liked you. So it's basically misunderstood the whole emotion of Steve Jobs, which, to your point, was always about getting the mission done. It wasn't personal in that way, right? He never hated anybody. In fact, he respected a lot of people, but he was permanently, as you say, sticking to the vision, which is something to admire.
Yeah. I mean, he's a perfect example of someone who was, apparently, I mean, obviously I never knew him personally, but he is depicted to be not particularly nice father and not a very nice person. But actually, for me, the drive and ambition and vision and purpose outweighs all of that. I barely even notice the kind of bad stuff about him. And of course, it's a Hollywoodized film, so it's perhaps wildly inaccurate. Who knows? Danny Boyle directed it, right? Great film, but it's a character piece, so who knows how accurate it is. But all I see is a genius at work, who I find incredible.
Yeah, I feel like as well. There's plenty. His life was cut short, of course, but I always think about people like Carnegie, who were they were considered quite an evil employer in the early years, right, making people work long hours, and then later in life he spent all his fortune giving back and helping people. I feel like Steve Jobs didn't actually have that opportunity to get to that point. I always felt like, imagine if you bought an iPhone and as soon as it loaded up, before you can use it, you have to donate £5 to charity. If you spent £1,000 on a phone, what harm would it do to have to send £5 to a charity on top, right? And he had the power to do things like that, but I feel like he never got around to it, which is a shame, because therefore his legacy is, but it's interesting. Anybody else? Just for
who have I said? Bill Gates, Elon Musk, and Steve Jobs.
Anybody abstract? Anyway, no pressure.
I'm a bit of a Leo fan, Leo DiCaprio. I like his kind of investment portfolio. I don't think that many people are aware that he takes some quite interesting size and some quite interesting markets. He's just helped fund some synthetic diamond lab over in the States, which
ironic considering he did a movie about it too.
But he's playing a character in that. Totally. I think his acting's fantastic. We're going to talk about actors. I think Daniel Day-Lewis and Joaquin Phoenix are like in a league of their own. I absolutely adore those two, probably closely followed by Leo. But no, I just think anyone. I've always been a fan of people who are able to see kind of things that others can't. Nothing gives me more pleasure than kind of knowing that something's going to happen before it happens, especially in business. And we're not there yet, of course, but it's kind of, if I went out on the world stage now and announced to people that we're making alcohol-free alcohol and, it's going to be amazing, most people would not understand that. They wouldn't really get it. It's not something that comes naturally. We get an awful lot of what's the point? Why would I drink this? Why wouldn't I just have a water? And that like fuels me because they are incapable of seeing what I see, and actually makes me feel really good about myself because
it's exciting. You see the future that they don't see yet.
Well, yeah, exactly. So I know that, when this grows and snowballs into, a major thing in the world and, cannibalizes alcohol sales all across the planet, that's going to be a really exciting time for me because I know that millions of people can't see it yet. So anyone who kind of has visions like that, who pulls it off successfully, which of course I haven't done yet, I find really exciting.
I always find actors personally, I've never, generally speaking, being very general, I never really was in awe of actors or famous people generally. But when actors turn their attention to missions like DiCaprio's done, I was watching a lot, of course, Denzel Washington, because he sponsors a lot of young actors, and one of them was one of the actors recently who died. And I just, I suddenly have a whole new respect for Denzel Washington. I didn't realize how many young people he was supporting and investing in to help them out of poverty and into, say, an acting career. And when suddenly an actor has a mission, suddenly it makes it so much more valuable than you were in Titanic. I couldn't care less. I like the movie, don't get me wrong, but someone said, "Do you want to meet DiCaprio?" and he'd just been in Titanic. I wouldn't be interested really.
No, completely agree that it's just nice to know that. Well, because it makes them a real person, doesn't it? Instead of someone who, for all we know, back to the social media point, could just be fame or money hungry, right? Who knows why they began their acting career. But no, I think giving back in general is very important.
Yeah. Well, thank you for what you're doing to give back, and thank you for your time to coming on the podcast again today. Really enjoyed it. Thanks so much.
Simon. Cheers.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Good Luck Club podcast. We know you have thousands of podcasts you could be listening to, and you decide to listen to ours. We feel incredibly lucky.